The world's largest nuclear power is teetering on the edge of chaos, its political and military foundations cracking under the weight of internal strife. Recent military revolts, escalating tensions among regional leaders, and the infamous Wagner Group's rebellion have exposed vulnerabilities once hidden beneath Russia's authoritarian facade. As the war in Ukraine saps resources and highlights glaring weaknesses in command, the question arises, is Russia on the verge of unraveling into a full-blown civil war, or can the Kremlin regain control before the tipping point is reached? Join us as we analyze and assess Russia's critical situation in this video. Russia's history of internal power struggles dates back to the devastating civil war of 1917 to 1922, which claimed between 7 and 12 million lives, mostly civilians. This conflict, fought between the Bolshevik-led Red Army and the White Movement, established a pattern of military involvement in political transitions that continues to influence modern Russia. The Russian Civil War demonstrated how military loyalty could determine political outcomes. The Bolsheviks succeeded partly due to their creation of political commissars to ensure military allegiance. This system of military control became a blueprint for future Russian leaders, as the armed forces played decisive roles in subsequent political transitions. Vladimir Putin's rise to power in 1999 heralded a new era of centralized authority in Russia, characterized by a calculated and systematic consolidation of control across all facets of the state. One of his early priorities was tightening state control over mass media and the internet, ensuring that narratives favorable to the Kremlin dominated public discourse while dissenting voices were increasingly silenced. In parallel, he initiated a sweeping renationalization of key industries, bringing approximately 70% of the country's economy under direct state management, thereby strengthening the government's grip on vital sectors. Putin also reshaped the relationship between the Kremlin and Russia's oligarchs, establishing a framework where their continued success depended on unwavering personal loyalty to his administration. This strategic move further entrenched his influence over the nation's elite and its vast wealth. To secure internal stability and counter potential uprisings, he created the Russian National Guard, a force specifically tasked with maintaining domestic order and safeguarding his regime. Together, these measures form the foundation of Putin's enduring rule, embedding his authority deeply into the fabric of modern Russia. The evolution of military power structures under Putin's leadership has led to the emergence of distinct factions. The Wagner Group, formed in spring 2022, represents one of several military organizations operating with varying degrees of autonomy. Other groups, such as the Freedom of Russia Legion and the Siberian Battalion, emerged in response to internal tensions and the Ukraine conflict. Putin's understanding of power dynamics has shaped his approach to military leadership. By 2007, he had established more control over the military than any post-Stalin Soviet leader. However, this centralized control has shown signs of fracturing, as evidenced by recent military challenges and regional tensions. The military's role in Russian politics has been particularly significant during moments of transition. During the fall 1993 constitutional crisis, the army's support proved crucial for maintaining political control. This pattern of military involvement in political stability has continued, though recent events suggest a more complex landscape of competing military interests and loyalties. Recent developments, including the creation of new military formations and the emergence of regional power centers, echo historical patterns of civil conflict while presenting unique modern challenges to centralized authority. The military's evolving role in Russian politics continues to shape the nation's trajectory, as various factions vie for influence in an increasingly complex power structure. At the heart of Russia's current crisis lies a complex web of power relationships centered around key military and security figures. The structure of power in Putin's Russia operates through a system where relationships matter more than bureaucratic hierarchy, with politics under direct presidential control. At the heart of Vladimir Putin's power structure lies the Siloviki, a cohort of security service chiefs who ascended through the ranks of the KGB and have remained central to his administration. These individuals hold significant sway over Russia's strategic direction and control mechanisms. Nikolai Patrushev, head of Russia's Security Council, plays a pivotal role in shaping national security policy and long-term strategy. Alexander Bortnikov, as director of the Federal Security Service, oversees domestic intelligence and counterintelligence operations, ensuring internal stability. Sergei Shoigu, the Minister of Defense, has been a crucial figure in managing Russia's military campaigns, including the ongoing war in Ukraine. Together, these key figures exemplify the integration of intelligence, military, and political power that defines Putin's governance model. The military command structure in Russia operates under a rigid vertical hierarchy, where the Minister of Defense wields significant authority, subject only to the president's directives. However, recent developments have underscored substantial shifts within this system. The appointment of General Valery Gerasimov as the commander of forces in Ukraine marked a significant change in operational oversight, signaling an effort to centralize command during a critical conflict. This was accompanied by structural reforms, including reorganizing military districts and creating new maneuver divisions designed to enhance operational flexibility and preparedness. Additionally, the integration of various military groups under a unified command framework reflects the Kremlin's intent to streamline military effectiveness amid mounting challenges. Simultaneously, tensions between Moscow and regional authorities have become increasingly visible, underscoring the fragmented nature of Russia's power dynamics. Regional military districts have gained growing autonomy, and the emergence of independent regional military formations has further complicated the central government's control. This decentralization has fueled competition for resources and influence among regional leaders, creating an environment of heightened rivalry that challenges Moscow's traditional dominance. The military leadership has faced traditional obstacles in Russian civil-military relations, including the general reluctance to reform and the existence of military clans based on service branches pursuing their organizational interests. The Ministry of Defense and the Kremlin operate with skewed information that generally overstates the status of armed forces due to the lack of independent parliamentary oversight. Recent events have exposed vulnerabilities in this power structure. The relationship between the minister and the chief of the general staff remains crucial within this system, with its future efficacy depending largely on political strength and connection with Putin. This dynamic has become particularly significant as Russia faces mounting challenges both internally and in its military operations abroad. The Wagner Group's armed rebellion in June 2023 marked an unprecedented challenge to Russia's military establishment. On June 23, 2023, Wagner leader Yevgeny Prigozhin initiated what he termed a march of justice against the Russian military leadership. The rebellion emerged from a deepening rift between Prigozhin and Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu. The immediate trigger was Prigozhin's accusation that the Russian Defense Ministry had attacked Wagner forces, though this claim was denied by the government. This confrontation followed months of escalating tensions over military resources and strategy in Ukraine. The Wagner Group's strength during its audacious rebellion lay in its formidable manpower, substantial arsenal, and battlefield experience, making it a unique and dangerous force capable of challenging the Russian state. By the time of the uprising, the group had amassed an estimated 50,000 fighters, with a significant portion, around 40,000, recruited from Russian prisons. These recruits, though unconventional, added sheer numbers and desperation-driven tenacity to Wagner's ranks. Additionally, the group had access to advanced weaponry, including tanks and air defense systems, acquired through various channels. Reports suggest some military hardware may have been procured through clandestine purchases, including alleged deals with North Korea, further augmenting their combat readiness. The rebellion highlighted the group's operational prowess and capacity to execute swift and decisive maneuvers. Wagner forces demonstrated their strength by seizing control of Rostov-on-Don, a critical logistical hub and a city of 1 million people, with remarkable ease. Their rapid northward advance brought them to within just 200 kilometers of Moscow, showcasing their ability to mount a direct threat to the heart of Russian power. Despite initial resistance from Russian military units, Wagner fighters successfully repelled these attempts, underscoring their battlefield effectiveness and tactical superiority during the early stages of the rebellion. This unprecedented challenge to the Kremlin's authority revealed not only the potency of the Wagner Group, but also significant vulnerabilities within Russia's defense and command structures. The rebellion's primary goals focused on removing key military leadership figures. Prigozhin demanded the dismissal of Defense Minister Shoigu and Chief of General Staff Valery Gerasimov. The group's strategic position was strengthened by their control of Rostov-on-Don, which housed the Southern Military District headquarters, a crucial command center for Russia's Ukraine operations. The crisis escalated dramatically as Wagner's forces advanced toward Moscow, creating a direct and unprecedented threat to the Russian capital. In a televised address, President Vladimir Putin condemned the rebellion as an act of treason, framing it as a betrayal not only of the state but of the Russian people. The tense situation seemed poised to spiral into open conflict until Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko intervened as a mediator, brokering a compromise that prevented further bloodshed. The negotiated agreement led to the dismissal of criminal charges against Wagner fighters, allowing them to avoid prosecution. The deal also offered Wagner troops the option to integrate into the Russian military by signing contracts with the Defense Ministry, thereby formalizing their status within the national armed forces. As part of the resolution, Wagner's leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin, accepted exile in Belarus, effectively removing him from the Russian political and military landscape. The rebellion's aftermath revealed significant details about Wagner's relationship with the Russian state. Putin later confirmed that the group had received 86.262 billion rubles, approximately $1 billion, in state funding between May 2022 and May 2023, contradicting earlier denials of state connections to the organization. Ramzan Kadyrov's growing autonomy in Chechnya represents a unique challenge to Russia's centralized authority. As Moscow grapples with military setbacks in Ukraine and internal instability, Kadyrov's influence has expanded beyond regional boundaries, creating a complex power dynamic within Russia's political landscape. Kadyrov has established unprecedented authority within Russia's political system, operating with a degree of independence unseen among other regional leaders. His control extends beyond Chechnya's borders, with Chechen security forces operating across the Russian Federation. The republic receives substantial federal funding, with over 80% of Chechen expenditures subsidized by Moscow. Ramzan Kadyrov, the leader of Chechnya, wields considerable military influence within Russia, making him a key player in the nation's complex power structure. At the core of his authority is command over an estimated 70,000 troops, a formidable force that functions as both a regional army and a personal security apparatus loyal to Kadyrov rather than the central government. This military strength is bolstered by his control over Chechen law enforcement agencies, granting him near complete oversight of internal security within the region. Kadyrov's influence extends far beyond Chechnya's borders. His troops have been deployed in various conflicts, including the ongoing war in Ukraine, where they have taken part in frontline operations. These deployments serve both to bolster Russian military efforts and to reinforce Kadyrov's standing as a loyal ally of the Kremlin. Additionally, Chechen security forces have been known to operate in other regions of Russia, further demonstrating the reach of Kadyrov's power. This blend of regional dominance and extraterritorial influence positions Kadyrov as a uniquely powerful figure within Russia's political and military landscape, raising questions about the balance of power between the Kremlin and its influential regional leaders. Recent events have highlighted Kadyrov's willingness to challenge federal authority. In October 2023, he publicly accused Russian lawmakers of plotting his assassination and threatened them with a blood feud. His forces have demonstrated their reach by conducting operations in Moscow itself, including a notable incident at Wildberry's office that resulted in 2 deaths and approximately 10 injuries. The relationship between Kadyrov and federal security services has grown increasingly tense. His forces often act without agreement from federal authorities, conducting armed raids and operations outside Chechnya's territory. Despite these confrontations, Kadyrov has maintained protection from consequences due to his direct relationship with Putin. Kadyrov's privileged status presents a growing challenge to the Kremlin's authority. While maintaining public loyalty to Putin, he has demonstrated increasing autonomy in several ways, such as establishing independent military operations, controlling internal affairs without federal oversight, making unilateral decisions affecting neighboring regions, and maintaining direct control over security forces. The situation has created a delicate balance where Putin relies on Kadyrov for regional stability while managing the risks of his growing influence. Kadyrov's position remains secure largely due to Putin's protection, as he serves as a guarantor of Russian priorities in the North Caucasus. However, this arrangement has led to tensions with other power structures within Russia, particularly the security services and military leadership. This complex dynamic adds another layer of instability to Russia's current political situation, as Kadyrov's autonomous actions and growing influence contribute to the broader pattern of challenges to centralized authority. His ability to operate with relative impunity while maintaining formal allegiance to Moscow exemplifies the fractures emerging in Russia's power structure. Russia's economic landscape has undergone dramatic shifts as internal power struggles and the Ukraine conflict strain its financial resources. The Russian government's 2024 budget reveals unprecedented military spending of 6% of GDP, marking the first time in modern history that defense spending will exceed social expenditure. The Russian economy is grappling with intensifying pressures, driven by a volatile mix of domestic challenges and the broader impact of international sanctions. Despite these difficulties, some economic indicators have revealed surprising resilience. By July 2023, GDP growth had reached an impressive 4.9%, reflecting a short-term recovery in certain sectors. Unemployment also hit a record low of 3%, suggesting a tight labor market bolstered by increased demand in specific industries. However, This apparent stability masks deeper concerns, as inflation surged to nearly 9% by early 2024, eroding consumer purchasing power and creating additional strain on households. Compounding these issues, the central bank's key interest rate climbed to a staggering 21%. A move intended to curb inflation, but one that also risks stifling economic activity and investment. Amid these challenges, the military-industrial complex has emerged as a dominant force driving economic growth. Fueled by the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and escalating defense spending, several industries have seen remarkable expansion. Transport production increased by 66.7%, reflecting heightened demand for logistical and military vehicles. Similarly, the production of computers and electronics grew by 42.6%, while navigation device manufacturing soared by 72.4%, underscoring the critical role of technology in modern warfare. These developments highlight a significant shift in Russia's economic priorities, with military-oriented industries overshadowing civilian sectors, and raising concerns about the long-term sustainability of this growth model. Western sanctions have fundamentally altered Russia's international trade dynamics. The EU, previously Russia's largest trading partner accounting for 37.3% of total trade in 2020, has imposed unprecedented restrictions. Trade relations have shifted dramatically, with Russia seeking new partnerships in Asia to mitigate isolation from developed economies. The impact on foreign investments has been severe. Russian central bank reserves worth €300 billion remain blocked in the EU and other G7 countries. Additionally, approximately €20 billion in assets belonging to over 1,500 sanctioned individuals and entities have been frozen. The scale of military expenditure presents significant challenges for Russia's economic stability. Defense spending in 2024 will almost double compared to 2023, while spending on education and healthcare will remain stagnant, representing a real-term reduction. The government plans to spend 11.5 trillion rubles will be directed toward defense. 7.5 trillion rubles were allocated for social spending. National security expenditures are projected at 3.5 trillion rubles. The strain on resources is evident as the National Wealth Fund's liquid assets have dropped to their lowest level since 2008, standing at just $31 billion. This depletion of reserves, combined with rising military expenses and Western sanctions, creates significant challenges for sustaining the current level of military operations. The economic pressure is further intensified by Russia's growing dependence on imports, despite sanctions. The devaluation of the ruble and the cost of import substitution have led to a radical increase in military equipment prices. This situation has created what economists describe as a snare of perpetual war, where reducing military expenditure could trigger significant structural economic shock. The delicate balance of power between Moscow and Russia's regions has entered a critical phase, revealing deep-seated tensions that threaten national stability. Recent developments show a significant shift in regional dynamics, with local power structures gaining unprecedented influence across the vast nation. The economic disparity between Moscow and the rest of Russia has grown to alarming proportions, exacerbating tensions between the capital and other regions. Over a decade, Moscow's budget expanded 2.3 times, reaching an impressive 2.8 trillion rubles by 2020. This immense concentration of wealth has fueled resentment, as the city now controls over 20% of the consolidated incomes of regional budgets. Beyond financial dominance, Moscow benefits from preferential treatment in various areas, further deepening the divide. The capital enjoys priority in infrastructure development, serves as the hub for federal agencies and state-owned enterprises, and offers political and economic advantages for businesses registered there. These factors combine to create disproportionate access to investment opportunities, leaving other regions at a distinct disadvantage and fueling grievances against the center. Adding to this complexity is Russia's diverse ethnic composition, which includes 195 distinct groups, each with its own cultural and political interests. This intricate demographic landscape underscores the challenges of governing a nation with such vast cultural diversity. The population includes 6 ethnic groups exceeding 1 million people, highlighting significant regional concentrations of identity. Structurally, Russia's federal system includes 21 national republics, 5 autonomous regions, and 1 autonomous oblast, which were established to provide a degree of self-governance while maintaining ties to the central government. The Kremlin's approach to managing ethnic diversity is twofold. It aims to preserve cultural identities while ensuring central control over territories rich in resources. However, demographic shifts, including declining ethnic Russian populations in several regions, are beginning to reshape this balance. These changes could pose long-term challenges to Moscow's dominance, as shifting demographics may alter the political and economic dynamics in resource-rich and strategically important areas. The intersection of economic disparity and ethnic complexity paints a picture of a nation struggling to reconcile centralization with its inherent diversity. Putin's earlier achievement of dismantling regional clans has begun to unravel. Several factors contribute to this weakening of central control. The abolition of governor term limits in 2021 has allowed regional leaders to consolidate power. In some regions, Kremlin-appointed governors have merged with local elites, creating new power centers that operate with increasing autonomy. This trend is particularly evident in resource-rich areas, where economic leverage provides additional independence from Moscow. The situation is further complicated by Moscow's sclerotic system of governance. Technocrats appointed to regional positions, initially expected to maintain central control, have instead begun establishing local power bases. This development marks a significant shift from Putin's earlier strategy of rotating governors to prevent the formation of regional strongholds. The emergence of these regional fiefdoms indicates a possible iteration of post-Putin Russia. As economic pressures mount and military resources are stretched due to ongoing conflicts, these regional power structures could gain additional leverage against central authority, potentially pushing Russia closer to internal conflict. Global powers have mounted an unprecedented response to Russia's internal instability and its ongoing war in Ukraine, marking a significant shift in international relations. The United States and its allies have implemented extensive sanctions while providing substantial military and economic support to Ukraine, with aid exceeding $87 billion from the global coalition. The European Union and its member states have demonstrated unwavering unity in their response, implementing massive and unprecedented sanctions against Russia. These measures target financial sectors and capital markets, energy exports and technology access, individual assets and travel restrictions, and defense industry capabilities. The United States has emerged as a leading supporter, providing more than $44.2 billion in security assistance to Ukraine. This commitment extends beyond immediate military aid, as Western nations coordinate their actions closely with NATO, G7, and other strategic partners. The response of Asian nations to the ongoing conflict has underscored the complexity of the global geopolitical landscape. Countries such as Singapore, South Korea, and Japan have firmly aligned with Ukraine, offering steadfast support in both political and economic terms. In contrast, major economies like China, India, and Indonesia have adopted positions of strategic neutrality, reflecting their broader commitment to maintaining flexibility in a rapidly changing world order. This division highlights the emergence of three distinct blocs that are reshaping international relations. The first bloc, composed of pro-Ukraine nations, is largely Western-aligned and includes countries that provide direct military, financial, and humanitarian assistance to Kyiv. The second bloc consists of nations that have maintained or even strengthened their ties with Moscow, reflecting a pro-Russia stance despite widespread international condemnation. The third bloc is made up of non-aligned nations that prioritize strategic autonomy, balancing their interests without overtly siding with either camp. These alignments reveal deeper shifts in global power dynamics as countries reassess traditional alliances and carve out independent foreign policy strategies. The broader international response to the conflict has fundamentally altered the global security architecture. The United Nations General Assembly has overwhelmingly condemned Russia's actions, signaling a strong international consensus against Moscow's aggression. At the same time, NATO has suspended all practical cooperation with Russia, a move that has reinforced the alliance's unity and expanded its political and military influence. This renewed cohesion has not only enhanced NATO's global standing but also redefined its role as a counterbalance to Russian ambitions. These developments have triggered a series of significant outcomes on the global stage. Economic realignment has become evident as nations adapt to sanctions and seek new trade partnerships, reshaping international commerce. Additionally, Russia faces unprecedented diplomatic isolation, with a growing number of countries distancing themselves from Moscow. Yet some nations continue to maintain strategic neutrality, reflecting the multifaceted and regionally specific nature of the geopolitical shifts at play. The conflict has prompted increased reliance of European countries on the US for both economic and security stability. This dependency has been particularly evident in energy security, as European nations seek alternatives to Russian supplies. The International Court of Justice has played a significant role, ordering Russia to cease military operations immediately. This legal dimension adds another layer to the international community's response, demonstrating the activation of multiple mechanisms to address the crisis. The effectiveness of these measures is evident in their impact on Russia's economy and military capabilities. Western sanctions have targeted Russia's ability to sustain its war effort, while support for Ukraine has included training programs and advanced military equipment. This coordinated response represents the most comprehensive international reaction to a major power's actions in recent history. The situation has also revealed the limitations of international institutions in managing conflicts involving nuclear powers. While the UN Security Council's effectiveness was hampered by Russia's veto power, the activation of the Uniting for Peace resolution demonstrated alternative mechanisms for international action. As Russia navigates through its most challenging period since the 1990s, analysts project several distinct trajectories for the nation's future. The combination of internal military tensions, economic pressures, and international isolation has created unprecedented uncertainty about Russia's stability and direction. Recent analysis has identified 4 primary scenarios for Russia's near-term future, each shaped by different geopolitical, military, and economic dynamics. These scenarios offer a glimpse into the potential paths Russia could follow as it navigates its ongoing conflict with Ukraine and the wider global challenges it faces. The first scenario, labeled as the Long War, envisions a prolonged conflict marked by continued attrition, mounting economic strain, and a steadily growing military buildup. In this scenario, Russia's military expenditure would remain high, consuming around 6% of GDP, a figure that underscores the considerable strain on resources, but also suggests that the country could sustain its military efforts for an extended period. However, the prolonged nature of such a war would inevitably come at a significant cost, with civilian sectors experiencing deep austerity. The second possibility is a frozen conflict, in which the front lines stabilize but tensions persist. While the conflict may not escalate into full-scale fighting, the political and military situation remains fragile. In this scenario, Russia's position would be entrenched, though with limited Western support and continued regional instability. This outcome reflects a situation where neither side achieves a decisive victory, but the conflict drags on with no clear resolution. A Ukrainian victory scenario, while potentially less likely in the short term, would see Russia withdraw from Ukraine, leading to a significant internal restructuring within Russia. This scenario hinges on sustained Western unity and increased economic pressure, which could force Russia to reconsider its military commitments. If Ukraine were to successfully push Russian forces out, the Kremlin would be forced to confront both domestic political ramifications and the long-term costs of its failed military campaign. The most extreme scenario, Russian state fracture, foresees the disintegration of Russia's central authority, with regional autonomy increasing and a power vacuum emerging. This breakdown would be driven by military factions vying for control, coupled with an economic collapse that weakens Moscow's ability to govern. In this outcome, Russia could face a drastic internal reorganization, where regional leaders gain more influence, potentially leading to a decentralization of power and fragmentation of the state. Looking ahead, the economic trajectory suggests that Russia could sustain its current military spending levels for a prolonged period. However, this would come at a high cost to civilian sectors, which would likely face severe austerity measures. By 2026, the Kremlin will likely confront critical decisions regarding resource allocation, particularly between maintaining domestic stability, continuing military operations, participating in strategic arms development, and managing the security of its western borders. These decisions will be pivotal in determining the future trajectory of the Russian state. The risk of escalation remains a significant concern in the current context. Several factors contribute to this potential, including Russia's nuclear capabilities. The country has updated its nuclear doctrine to include responses to massive missile attacks, with the threshold for nuclear use becoming increasingly ambiguous. While technical and operational constraints still impose high barriers to deploying battlefield nuclear weapons, the possibility of escalation remains a critical concern for global security. Furthermore, Russia's ongoing military modernization efforts suggest that the country is preparing for a sustained, large-scale military engagement. This includes considerable production increases across multiple sectors, such as a 66.7% rise in transport equipment, a 42.6% increase in electronics, and a 72.4% boost in navigation devices. These improvements reflect an expanding military-industrial complex designed to support Russia's long-term strategic objectives. In terms of stability, several key factors will determine Russia's resilience in the coming years. The role of China is particularly important, as Beijing's support is crucial for Russia's economic survival. China's decisions regarding economic and potential military support will be a critical factor in shaping Russia's ability to maintain its current policies. However, this growing dependence on China may result in an increasingly asymmetric alliance, potentially limiting Russia's strategic autonomy. Despite the challenges posed by international sanctions, Russia's economy has demonstrated unexpected resilience. The country's GDP growth reached 4.9% in the second quarter of 2023, largely driven by the growth of its military production sector. Additionally, state spending continues to play a role in maintaining social stability, particularly in light of ongoing economic pressures. Domestically, the regime's ability to maintain control will hinge on several factors, particularly its control over the information space, the effectiveness of its security services, and the loyalty of regional elites. The military establishment faces increasing strain from multiple directions. The defense budget has nearly doubled compared to 2023, while the National Wealth Fund's liquid assets have dropped to their lowest level since 2008. This economic pressure, combined with ongoing military operations, creates what analysts term a snare of perpetual war. International dynamics will play a crucial role in shaping Russia's trajectory. The Western response, particularly regarding sanctions and support for Ukraine, continues to influence Russian strategic calculations. The United States and European unity remains a critical factor, especially concerning military assistance and economic pressure. Regional stability presents another significant challenge. The emergence of autonomous military formations and increasing regional authority creates potential flashpoints across the Russian Federation. Putin's careful balance of regional interests, particularly in areas with significant ethnic minorities or resource wealth, faces growing pressure from economic constraints and military demands. The security apparatus's evolution suggests increasing militarization of Russian society. Recent developments include regional governors' authority to create private military companies, National Guard access to heavy weapons, and expanded military recruitment efforts. These changes indicate a fundamental shift in Russia's internal power structure, potentially creating conditions for future instability, even as they temporarily strengthen state control. The regime's increasing reliance on force and surveillance reflects both its current strength and potential vulnerabilities. The future of Russia is a matter of global concern. Russia is at a critical juncture that could reshape its future and the global geopolitical landscape. Internal fractures, highlighted by the Wagner Group rebellion and Kadyrov's growing power, expose vulnerabilities within Russia's leadership. With military spending rising and Western sanctions tightening, the country faces immense economic pressure. At the same time, regional authorities are gaining more autonomy, further complicating the situation. While the military-industrial sector drives growth, social spending declines, increasing the risk of instability. As Western nations unite against Russia's actions, the consequences ripple through global trade and diplomatic ties. The world is watching closely as Russia struggles to balance internal control, military needs, and international isolation. As for the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, if you want Ukraine to win or reach a favorable agreement for them, please comment one. Thank you for watching the video. Click like and subscribe to the channel to discuss military and political issues together.